All right. Hello, collectors. Charlie here from Cherry Collectibles, and I've got a very special guest with us today. We have Josh Luber, who is the co-founder of StockX and Fanatics Collectibles, and in 2022 started his own new collectible brand, Ghostwrite. He's just released a huge blind box release for the WNBA called Game Face, and he joins us here today to talk about how that release has gone, how the blind Dutch auction went for the first release of the new collectible figures, and generally we'll hope to get some insight from him into the future of collectibles, maybe the future of Ghostwrite, and see what else he knows about the future of collectibles. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, Josh.
Thank you very much for having me. You make me sound like a I don't know, some sort of a soothsayer. I don't have too much future knowledge, but we'll talk about all the stuff we've been doing so far. So
yeah, excellent. Now, thanks again for joining us. Now, Game Face came out maybe 2 weeks ago, just over 2 weeks ago, perhaps. And I've seen plenty of clips all over Instagram. That's where I get most of my stuff from, breakers hitting some of the beautiful figures out of the boxes. There was also a Dutch auction for, I think, around in my notes I've got about 200 cases worth of the figures. How did that blind Dutch auction go for that? And maybe for people who don't know, how does that format for an auction work?
Sure. Well, so for WNBA, this is the 5th release for Ghostwrite. Ghosts come in the same 3 sizes as Bear Bricks, which is the blind box size, the 2.5 inches is what we're talking about here. But the standard size is the 400%, which is about 11 inches, and then there's the large ones. And so this is actually the first time that we've done a blind box release, and so there were 12 individual ghosts in each case. Case is like this, and you have the individual boxes inside of them, there were 1,187 cases that were manufactured. That is not it is an odd number because it's based on the quantity of the individual ghosts. But so for us, as we were getting ready to release them and figure out how to sell them, all the other products that we've sold, all the 400%, which are much more limited, 20 units, 30 units, 50 units, everything was sold via blind Dutch auction. But for blind boxes, which is much more similar to trading cards, we went with a different strategy. So there were only 700 cases that were sold to the public. 900 cases that were sold to the public. The rest was for our seating and our archive and the team. 700 of those cases were sold wholesale to all the top breakers. I think there was about 12 different breakers, including obviously you guys, that received some cases. And then we had our direct release on Ghostwrite, where we sold 200 of those cases direct. And so we think that a blind Dutch auction, which is one form of what we call market-based pricing, the idea that we let the market set the price for the products, that we don't arbitrarily set a retail price. We just think that's a more fair way price anything. And this is not new for us. We did this when I was running Fanatics Collectibles, and we had a couple releases at Zero Cool that we did this. We did this back at StockX, where we had a couple releases there. And so I'll give the short version of how it works, which is that it's called a blind Dutch auction, and we didn't make this up. This is used in various forms of finance and the economy in different ways, usually around equity releases and IPOs of actual stock. But the way it works is everybody bids how much they're willing to pay. And that's actually the really important part here. All this is a way for us as a company to take in the demand of what does the market want to pay for this product. So everybody comes to Ghostwrite. You have 3 days There's no bots. There's no first come, first serve. There's no, chaos of trying to sort of, get the release. Everybody has the same fair chance to bid. And anyone can come over those 3 days and bid how much they're willing to pay for the product. At the end of those 3 days, we take all the bids, and however many units there are, in this case, there were 200, the 200 top bids win. And they're the people that are allowed to purchase the product. But the really important part is that the way the price is set by the lowest winning bid. So in this case, it's the 200th highest bid. So there were 200 units for sale. I think there ended up being about 360 or 370 bids that actually came in. So the 200th bid becomes what's called the clearing price, and everybody pays the clearing price, even the person that bid the most. So the highest bid, I think, on this product was $2,501. I think that was the highest price. So that was the top bid, but the clearing price was $500. That was the 200th bid, and so everybody pays $500, even the person that bid $2,500. And that does a couple things, but most importantly is it creates a fair system where almost everybody gets a product for less than what they bid. So everybody feels like they got a deal. It was fair, but it also leaves some hype in the market so that if people want to resell the product, if they want to resell it later, they can. And so, this will very quickly become an economics lecture, and happy to go as deep as this you want. But the important thing for us is that, we spent years talking to economists and professors and trying to figure out what is the right way to allow the market to set the price for products. And so we believe pretty strongly in this model. It worked out kind of exactly how we had hoped, which is at $500 a case, it is more than what the minimum bid was. But it was less than what the breakers were selling it for as individually, as most were selling it for about $50 a slot, somewhere in there. So it kind of made sense from the market standpoint and what we've seen. So anyway, we can talk as much about that as you want, but for us, this is really just a great place to be, being the first blind box, which is very much like trading cards, working with the WNBA and the league, and I'm sure you want to talk about some of that stuff too.
Yeah, it's an interesting format, and it's a little bit of an elegant way of getting around the problems of things like bots. Because
that's right.
You're actually not fixing it with technology and code. There's some code involved for the system, but you're getting around it by having the market sort of set the price. And it's not who has the best software for filling in the checkout instead.
That's right. And it's not even who is willing to pay the most, because we as a company then basically give that money back. We use bids as really just a proxy for demand to try to get to what's a fair market price. But, when you one card that's sold at Golden Auctions and it's a huge card, whoever's willing to pay the most, they pay $1 million for the card, they get it, and it's straightforward. You can't do that if you're trying to release many products into the market, and you don't want to do that, right? You don't want to take every last dollar out there. It's important that there's still hype left in the system, that there's still value left in the system for people to either resell it or for it to go up in value over time, et cetera. We're just trying to find what is a fair market price to put it out there, which often has no correlation to what a retail price would have been, as retail prices are often arbitrary. So, this is the world we live in. You guys, know cards better than anybody. And in our case, we're just trying to take the lessons that we've all learned about market demand from trading cards, and how trading cards create chase elements and demand and value, et cetera.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Now, I shift to your choice to go with the WNBA, and before we do, we were in Macau at the large ASCC, the Asia Card Show, just recently, and one of the biggest sales, perhaps the biggest sale that we had over the weekend, was a 5-figure sum for a Caitlin Clark. I think it was an RPA from Select. So a bit of foreshadowing there, perhaps, but what went into the choice to move to the WNBA for this Game Face release? Because it was a really, obviously there'd been some sports related ghosts before. I think in the Melbourne store, Grayson's got one of the game ball ghosts on display. But what went into the decision around moving to the WNBA, and what's been the reaction maybe amongst players that know about it, or amongst their audience?
Yeah, a lot of times, in life as in business, timing is just everything, and sometimes you just get lucky. And for us, because we have licenses with the WNBA, the NBA, and Major League Baseball, and you'll see similar sets coming for the NBA around playoffs, so around like May, and then for Major League Baseball in June or July. But it just so happened that as we started this process, the WNBA was in season, and not only was it in season, but it was in this historic season where you have Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and the sort of, this renaissance of women's basketball and everything that's been going on. So we were just fortunate that the timing worked out right for it to be first. And in fact, we actually started the process in June, and they were already well into the season. And so we had to catch up. And in fact, we would have loved to have done the release closer to when the finals were in mid-October. But we did this, trying to create a whole product and get out there. So we ended up getting out a little bit later in December, which was fine. But again, just very much sort of timing for all three releases. But in retrospect, I couldn't have planned it better to have Caitlin, because, one of the big, the whole concept of this, of blind boxes, is treating them like trading cards, where there are different parallels, and there's a 1 of 1, and there's a gold number to 10. And I actually have a Dana Taurasi number to 10 here in front of me. This is one that I pulled. And the players actually have on their uniforms when it's a rookie. So like the Caitlin Clark, has an R on the shoulder showing that this is a rookie ghost. Same thing with Angel Reese and Cameron Brink. So so it really just it worked out perfectly. And for sure, the Caitlin Clark ghosts are selling for the most. And I'm hoping to be able to find a gold or a chrome one. The 1 of 1 is the big one that's out there. For sure, that's the biggest hit in the set. And as far as I know, that hasn't been pulled yet. But this is the fun part of this, right? And then we get to do it again for NBA and Major League Baseball. So
yeah. Have you managed to get one of the? Have you managed to get a Caitlin Clark ghost to her, or to Cameron, or to Angel yet?
So the way that all group licensing works for same thing, trading cards, and for us, is you need 2 licenses. One is with the league, and one is with the Players Association. So all the deals are through the Players Association, not with the players directly. However, all of the players have a seating package that was sent to all of them, which includes a couple unopened cases. And I mentioned there's 3 sizes of ghosts. Well, this set is obviously the blind box set. There's only one set of the 28-inch, the 1,000% ghosts. There's one of each player that was made, and each one of those was given to the player herself. And so I have not actually, most of them should be being delivered this week, as some of this was delayed because it has to go through the PA. We know that we gave Lisa Leslie hers in person on air. That was fun. She was excited about it. We have some good pictures of her with it. So so we'll start to see some of this reaction soon. I'm sure they saw it online, but I don't think they know they're getting the big one. And I mean, they're really cool, the 1,000%. I mean, they're really cool. I'm the only one that has any. I don't have any of the players, but of other 1,000% ghosts. So yeah, so we'll see. That's coming up soon.
That's cool. Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on their social media or channels, I guess, and see what they end up posting. That'll be great fun if they do. Why do you think was the blind box idea a way to appeal more to card collectors?
Not directly. That wasn't the purpose of it. It is I think is an indirect sort of value that came out of it. And this is very much about sort of the ethos of Ghostwrite as a brand. We talk about it as the first true collectible brand, in that everything that we do for every Ghostwrite we make, not just the blind boxes, is really thought through of what would collectors care about, and to not make a product that's just something someone's gonna throw away, but to really thought into it. And that goes for things like, supply. We put on the bottom of the foot of every Ghost, not just the blind box, but even, all the others. We put exactly how many exist. So, in this case, we sold 20, but there were 50 that were made. So everybody knows exactly how much supply exists. Like anyone who collects anything knows that how many, whatever the pop report is, whatever, the quantity, like that matters. It matters to value, it matters to what people collect. So, things like that, or the fact that like, this is the standard packaging for the 400%. This is the packaging because it was very important that we created packaging that collectors could keep sealed, but also still display their Ghost and see it and everything else, right? Because we know that collectors care about, keeping their product sealed. So, I sort of give that as the backdrop, so that when we started the process of, okay, we know that we're going to work with the leagues, and then we know that we're going to create a blind box set. All of the learnings from trading cards, trading cards have been doing this. The industry has been doing it for 40 years of how to create, different parallels and variants and chase elements, whether it's, with autographs or jerseys or whatever it is. So it just became a very natural place where this would appeal to trading card collectors. And because it's sports, but we're working on a blind box set right now that is with, well, I won't give away, but it is with non-sports, and that may not be for trading card collectors, but it will likely be for the collectors of that particular IP that we do. But we'll still have the same concepts of chase elements and gold number to 10 and chrome number to 5 and the fire 101. So that stuff will still be in there. Whether trading card collectors care about that as much when it's a non-sports IP, we'll see.
That's interesting because I recall at the National a couple of years ago, maybe now, there was I think it was Fanatics Collectibles, maybe, and with Zero Cool as well together, had a really spectacular sort of activation at the National with everybody was trying to get hold of Stranger Things cards, of a very limited June card set as well. And that I know a little bit about some of your collection, in that you're definitely a non-sport collector also. That's a lot of what my collection is as well. I pulled out a couple of packs actually. This is a lot of what my collection is these sorts of 80s, 90s sets, like these sorts of guys as well. Why do you think what is it, do you think that is that makes those older sets so cool, and conversely are not sort of collected as much as the sports, basketball, football, baseball, because the impact of some of those films, some of those toy lines like Transformers cards are really big into the culture, but the card values are not there as much.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about stuff that's pretty near to my heart, both from a business and personal standpoint. That year, that Zero Cool booth was pretty great.
Fantastic.
We had a good little run there, and unfortunately, once I left, I don't think there was anyone that really wanted to carry that torch. But I still believe really strongly in non-sport cards, because these are all the most important people in culture other than athletes, right? And whether they're musicians or artists or actors or I mean, they're all as important in culture as any athlete. But fundamentally, the reason why all of the non-sport cards have never reached the same level and value as sports is that there's never been a regular cadence of cards to collect, right? Collectors want to collect. They need the same thing, right? We've been buying Topps baseball cards since 1952. Every year we know there's going to be another Topps set. We've been buying, basketball cards since, whatever it is, the 60s. So, and the reason that that's been possible in sports and not in non-sports is because of players associations, what I spoke about earlier, the fact that you can get a group license. If Panini had to go player by player to everyone in the NBA every single year to get an NBA set done, there would never be basketball cards. It just wouldn't exist, right? It's just too much work. And same thing for all the other sports. But because it has existed, and because it exists historically, that we as fans and we as collectors are able to have these, and there's more value, more people want it, more people collect it. This was kind of the idea. This was the idea behind Zero Cool, was could we create a group licensing entity that we would go out and get actors and musicians and artists and if you get everyone to join, and then we could have a set every single year. The closest we've had to this is, Leaf done their Pop Century set. Yes. But every year is a little bit different. And obviously the licensing is a little bit wonky with Leaf, and they do obviously a lot of unlicensed stuff, and it's moved on. But, so I think we're at a place where eventually someone will do this. There's a couple brands like Gas, for example, that has now been doing non-sport cards for regular, it's been a couple years. Now, they've never done sets. They do individual releases. They did Billie Eilish 2 weeks ago. I think they did Snoop and Dre, last week. And so that's at least a starting point, as you have a brand that you can collect, but really you need sets that you can collect on a regular basis to be able to build a fan base, bring in the demand, right? And then slowly build up. And we've been making baseball cards since 1952. So you have a long way to go to catch up to the historical, collectability of sports cards versus non-sports cards.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm sure you've thought of it, or people around the world have thought of it. The only way I thought would be to have like a license with the movie or TV studios, I guess, and this gives us, I don't know, how much would that license cost? I don't know. But this gives us the license to create cards from everything you release this year or something like that. Like this is Netflix 2024 or whatever.
Well, that's right. Except for those organizations would have to change their standard deals with talent such that they have the rights, because we did licensing, for example, for the movie we did trading cards for the movie Jackass at Zero Cool, and we obviously started with the producers, and the producers said yes, but then we still had to go get the rights from each individual person in the set.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Because trading cards they didn't consider trading cards ahead of time. So it wasn't like baked into the deal that if you're in the movie, we have the right to use you. So you still have to go and do that individually. And we were able to do it. In fact, Travis Scott is in that Jackass movie, and he was not willing to give his rights. So he's not in the set, but all the other people are in the set who are in the movie.
Yeah.
Including, by the way, Tyler, the Creator, who is in that set. And that is, as far as I know, Tyler, the Creator's only trading card. And I think that set, in particular, Tyler, the Creator Parallels, should be an extraordinarily valuable card because of how important he is to culture and the fact that that's basically his only card. Which is
100%. Yeah, definitely a slept on set with cards like that in it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The one of the examples I had there, just going back to the licensing stuff, the Fright Flicks one, I'm astonished that set ever got released. That has films in it from 5, 6, 7 different movie studios. Characters. It's got Ghostbusters, Freddy. It's got The Predator. It's got Gremlins. I don't know how they managed to do that at the time. Somebody obviously managed to do it. Yeah, that's sort of, I guess that's where those sorts of sets run into that licensing issue. But you know, for all the non-sport collectors out there, the TV movie people, yeah, I definitely would collect, you know, a 2024 Netflix or a 2024 whatever Universal Studios or things like that. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
Continuing on sort of collectibles and collectible culture, where do you see and perhaps what do you think would Ghostwrite's place be in the collectibles world, whether it's cards, figures, sort of in the next 5 years, especially as digital and physical collectibles, you know, regular collectibles continue to sort of collide? We've seen things like Panini with their blockchain cards. There are other, you know, lots of other collectibles card sets that come out with a digital equivalent. What do you think happens in the next 5 years as this sort of space accelerates?
Yeah. Well, so for right now, all 400% Ghosts actually have a chip that's in the top of the head.
Wow.
We use that primarily. We use that solely today for authentication. In fact, we don't even promote it yet. Although, I mean, if you look at like the packaging from the first release, it actually doesn't say anywhere on here that there's a chip in there, but there is. And you know, we will continue to evolve that and how we use it. And I think eventually you get to a place where that digital content that you can access via the chip starts to become part of the product, and whether they're actual digital collectibles or not, or whether it's just content that augments the experience or augments the story, it's all TBD. It's all, you know, very much a possibility. For Ghostwrite, you know, we don't have any direct plans to create digital collectibles, but as a collectible brand, we are in this kind of sweet spot because collectible toys are big enough to matter. They're big enough to work with all the most important leagues. I mean, the fact that we have licenses with the NBA and WNBA, and you know, there's been, you know, collectible toys that have partnerships with Chanel and Louis Vuitton. I mean, so it's big enough to matter and work with all the most important brands and artists and companies. But it's not so big that you have these monoliths that already dominate the space, like in sneakers, Nike and Adidas, and in trading cards, you know, Panini and Fanatics and the NBA. So we get to sort of be in this spot that if we can be successful in doing this, and we already have a pretty good head start working with some of these leagues, that we can be the leader in this space. You know, you have Bear Brick, which you know, is made by a Japanese company called Medicom. This is kind of the leader for this space, and you have Funko, of course. But you know, Funko and Medicom are not the NBA and Nike, right? So it's a sort of a good sweet spot to be in, and you know, we got work to do to grow the RAM, but you know, that's kind of how we see that part of it growing.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, what has been? I'm sure you've learned like a million lessons in the different companies that you've co-founded or been part of. What has been the most surprising or exciting thing that you've learned during the last couple of years with Ghostwrite?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big question, but you know, I'll say that you know, this is somewhat cliche, but I find myself saying this probably more and more, you know, these days, is that, you know, a business is just people. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's just people. And for me, now running Ghostwrite, where it's me and there's 10 other people, there's 11 of us total. Almost all 10 of those people have worked with me before at either StockX or Fanatics Collectibles or both. And so to be able to work with exactly who I want to work with, to be able to have that sort of added synergy of you know, working together and knowing, you know, how people work. And by the way, I know exactly who the next 10 people are who I'll hire as we grow. As you know, I've now been doing this for a while and in this space, and you know, they're people that have been in the space, so they get the concept here, they get the vision, you know, they're part of it. And to show up every day with work and to work with the people you want to work with, I mean, that's priceless. And like I said, it seems kind of whatever cliche or cheesy, but it's the truth. And as we grow, I will not trade that for, anything on the growth pattern. Like that needs to hold true. When I left StockX, there were 1,400 people. When I left Fanatics Collectibles, there were, I don't know, 1,800 people. I mean, like there's just massive companies, and and you can only run a 1,000-person company like a 1,000-person company, but to have a 10-person company is pretty special. So anyway, that's the nice part about all this.
Yeah, and that sort of a team of that size do you find they are able to move quicker on things?
Oh yeah, and it's just big enough where we have all the core skills covered that we need. You don't need to have skill, like we don't have a CFO, we don't have anyone does tax or insurance or all the stuff that you can very easily outsource. We got 2 designers. Design is always the bottleneck for this sort of stuff. We have 2 engineers. Engineering is always the bottleneck, right? But you got enough talent to be able to do that stuff and still move fast. But like any company that's even remotely successful, there's a million things we wish we could do, and you can only do is move as fast as you can. So
yeah. Now I've got a couple more questions. One of them from Grayson wants me to ask you if you can remember your first purchase from Cherry, because we know that you're a card collector as well as figures, non-sport, and I think if I remember correctly, you are a bit of a G.I. Joe collector also.
Oh yeah, I have a very big G.I. Joe collection. What were you saying?
Before I go to that, because I'm a 80s toy collector as well. What was the item when you started? Two items. What was the item that you think maybe when you were younger made you a collector, and maybe you didn't know it at the time that it was making you a collector? For me, that was the Superpowers figures, the DC Comics, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, all of that line in the 80s was what did it for me. And then what was the item when you decided to pursue that collection later on in life? What was the item that you were like, okay, this is the grail. If I get that item, if I get that piece, then my collection is like, maybe it's finished or it's never finished, but it's, wow, if I have that piece, then my collection is amazing.
Yeah. So I know exactly those answers. So as a kid, I collected cards through the whole way. And then, I couldn't really afford a lot of sneakers until I got older. So the sneakers I had, I held on to. But obviously, under the most cliche thing ever is it was the 89 Upper Deck Griffey. I mean, it was just, that was, for me when the 89 Upper Deck set came out, I started collecting in 84. I was only, what was I, 84? I was 6. But by the time I get to 89, I'm now 11. So, I'm able to scratch together a little bit more money. Upper Deck came out as like $1 a pack. It was like, other packs were 50 cents a pack. So it was such a big deal. But I just remember, everything about that set and the Griffey and everything else, and just the idea that this could be like a long-term thing, so that was really the first. But then on the other side, I remember very clearly in I think it was 1991, the first time I saw somebody wearing the Jordan 5 Grape. And I have the same story as everyone else, which is that I always, I played basketball growing up. I always wanted a pair of Air Jordans. My mother would never buy me Air Jordans. Right? I didn't get my first pair of Jordans until I graduated college and had my first job and could buy my own pair. And it was literally the first thing I bought after my first paycheck. Right, I went to the mall and got a pair of Jordans. But when I saw the Grape 5s, which Jordan had only come out a couple years ago, right? So it was this just like, I couldn't believe there was somebody that was my age that was wearing them, at school, and it was the purple on a pair of Jordans, and it was just like everything about that was like, oh, like one day I will have a pair of those. and I actually didn't end up getting a pair for many, many years, not until they re-released in whatever that was, 2016 or 2017, because they hadn't re-released for so many years. So I couldn't go back and buy a pair from 1991. But, it was just like, I just remember, and I still obviously I don't know what I have 500 pairs of shoes, something like that. But that pair, when I look at it today, I still get that same feeling that I got the first time I saw that kid wearing it, and was like, oh my God, sneakers can do that, And so grape fives are that, like that thing for me. So
yeah, fantastic. I remember that same feeling as well of seeing people at school with shoes like that at school. And yeah, that for me, I was like, that is, wow, who wears that just to school? I can't believe that.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy.
And the previous question I had for you, can you recall that first card that
I know it was something that I started arguing with him online about it, and he probably remembers better than I do, and I remember arguing about it, and then we started talking about on DM. I can't remember what it was. It was probably some I don't know. What is it? It was like some like,
I think it was some sort of rookie card from the NBA, an NBA rookie card from maybe like a 2021 set. I think it was maybe Ja Morant, something like that. I think.
Yeah, it was something like, because it was around then. Yeah, I just remember that he had it listed on eBay, and it was really high, and I was trying to negotiate with him, and then we ended up talking on Instagram, and that's how we met. I can't remember the card, but I remember that we ended up talking from that. So
yeah, that's exactly right. I think so. Yeah. Okay, before I let you go, my final question, I suppose, then is you've alluded to perhaps having releases with the NBA, with MLB, but what is the next sort of 12 months look like for Ghostwrite?
Yeah, so we've talked about the Game Face set. Game Face is the design for the first year of Ghostwrite blind boxes. So NBA and Major League Baseball will have the same design, and you can think of that very much like Prism, where it's like, hey, this year this is designed for Prism for all sports. Next year you have another design, right? And but for the first year, it'll be one blind box per season. WNBA, NBA, Major League Baseball. But starting in the second year, we hope to actually do 2 blind boxes per season. There's only, for the WNBA, there were only 16 players in the set. For MLB and NBA, might be a little bit more. But even if we get up to 18 or 20, there's still hundreds of players in the set. So we can't, like trading cards, we can't have every player in every set. So what we want to do is have one set that happens at the start of each season that has all of the superstars that you're expecting, and then another set that happens at the end of the season that has like rookies that have emerged, superstars that emerged, kind of the way that like trading cards used to be like tops and tops traded, Fleer and Fleer update, right?
Yeah.
And so as we look in sort of the next 12 months, we'll see the evolution of the blind box sets. And that'll be kind of the regular cadence for every year, where you have these 3 leagues, these 6 sets that happen. And then in between that, it'll primarily be 400%, the 11-inch goes. And, we've done 4 releases so far, but you'll continue to see ones across all other areas of culture, right? This is how we really tap into music, art, fashion, all the other areas besides sport, right? Obviously, the blind box is really for sport. And that's how we grow. There will be different franchises and different, continuing sets for people to collect through the 400%. Again, collectors collect. They want to have, recurring products that happen. But the blind box is really about the scale and the leagues. And that's really the sort of the core for every year.
Well, that's great news. Like, especially those sorts of potential update sets for later in the seasons. Josh, again, thank you very much for joining me this morning, or this afternoon as it is for you. Really interesting chat with you. And yeah, good luck with the rest of the year. I hope everything continues to go as smooth as it has been.
Thanks, Ben. I really appreciate it. Good talking to you.
Thank you.